Hello, and welcome to SEIU 503's Strike for Black Lives Solidarity event. Thousands of people across the nation are participating in today's action, and we are here to lift up what's taking place around racial justice here in Oregon. My name is Emily Wong, and I've been an SEIU member since 2011, when I started working at the Oregon Health Authority Office of Equity and Inclusion. I also serve as Senate District 21 Cape Delegate, co-chair of the new Women of Color Caucus, and member of the Asian, Desi, and Pacific Islander Caucus. In unity with the Strike for Black Lives, we will begin with 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence in honor of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and all victims of state-sponsored violence. We'll begin in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. 8 minutes and 46 seconds is a long time. And I hope each of you were able to use that time as an opportunity to think about what Black, Indigenous, and other people of color are faced with just trying to live their lives. During a global pandemic, George Floyd's death has had a profound impact on many of us here in Oregon, the United States, and around the world. Throughout my public service career of over 20 years, I have fought hard to strengthen the health of Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color in both the Pacific Northwest and Midwest. In 2011, my family moved to Oregon from the same area of South Minneapolis where George was tragically killed. When I worked at the City of Minneapolis Department of Health, the commissioner and I worked closely with these communities most impacted by health disparities to take new and meaningful actions. We strove to overcome the Minneapolis Police Department's disturbing history of violence against Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color, which in 1968 resulted in the birth of the American Indian movement for the country. So our hearts broke along with the rest of the nation as we watched a community that we intimately know and love cry out, "I can't breathe," against this history of violence. However, this time, their voices rang out across the entire world, and last month in Oregon, helped to pass new bipartisan police accountability laws. In 2020, it is heartening to see all of our communities coming together, creating what feels like an unstoppable force of hope. Before we begin our panel discussion, if you have a question, please raise your hand and one of our staff will message you. We will take questions after our panelists speak, but if you have a question at any time, raise your hand in Zoom and staff will put you in the queue. Now, we will begin our panel discussion. We are so fortunate to be joined by three of our member leaders. Ibrahim Kulibali is the chair of SEIU 503's AFRAM caucus and works at the Bureau of Labor and Industry Civil Rights Division. Welcome, Ibrahim.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Steve, and thank you to all the attendees for being here today. And we have 126 participants. That shows how people are very interested in what's going on nowadays. So my name is Ibrahim Kulibali. I live in Eugene, and I became a member in 2015 when I joined Oregon State Hospital. And I'm originally from West Africa. I'm from a country named Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is a French spoken country. It's landlocked with about 20-some now million people. Very poor country, and where people are also known as being hard workers, and Burkina Faso actually means the land of honorable man. And I came to United States for the first time in 2008. I was in Paris, and I was working with the Bronx Museum of Art and Harlem Chamber of Commerce to put together an event where we invited indigenous women from Africa to come sell the handicraft, but also get to meet some artisans here in America and talk about techniques and kind of get to know each other, but also create a market for them. At that time, I was doing round trip, going back to Paris and coming here for a week. I wasn't really in the mindset of living here because it was for business, and but I was following what was going on because Obama was campaigning, and it was interesting to be not part of it, but being there as an observer and live in New York. And when I moved to Oregon, decided to learn English in 2011, and I became aware of being Black. And the first time I was called an N-word was here in Eugene, and I was going, we went to a bar just right next to the University of Oregon called Taylor, I believe, at that time. And as soon as we got out of our car, there was a young man sitting in the parking lot who called me the N-word. I was the only Black person in the group. It was kind of confusing first. It's like, is he really calling me the N-word? And what is that supposed to mean? Am I supposed to be angry? Or, I didn't know because it was the first time. I wasn't prepared. And so I started thinking about it. It's kind of stick with me for, still now. And then I went back to look at when I was living in New York, what happened. Racism can happen, but if you don't have the keys, the tools to read it, you may not notice it. So that's what happened in New York. When I was in New York, a friend of mine visited me from Israel. It was his first time here in the United States, and we decided to go to a nightclub. And when we got there, when we were in the cab driver asked me if I really know where we're going to. I said, yeah, we're going to this nightclub. And because I, Google it, found it, and my friend is here, we go to the nightclub. He said, yeah, but have you done some research about the nightclub? I said, no, you really don't care. That's where we want to go. When we got there, we were in line to get in. My friend, they checked his ID, they let him in. And when I got to the doorman, he told me, well, we're sorry, this is a private event. I said, how could this be a private event when my friend just got in? And they're all like, well, he was invited. I said, no, this guy doesn't know United States. Is here for his first time, and he is my guest. He's staying at my apartment. So there is no way he wasn't even aware of us coming here. There were, long story short, they didn't let me in. So I thought about what the cab driver was, trying to warn me about. It's like, you probably don't know this place, but they won't let you in. And I had my nephew here with me. One day he told me that he wanted to do newspaper delivery. And I was excited. I bought him a car, and then I started thinking about him being at 3 o'clock at people's porches, trying to deliver newspapers. Like, this is probably too dangerous. And that was a wake-up call for me to try to look deeply into the community I live in Eugene here. And racism happens to me a lot. Sometimes it is in people's silence. They don't talk to you, they avoid you, they go around you. They talk to people you are supposed to lead. They will take instruction from anybody but you. And racism happen in at workplace a lot. And the break rooms are, now the most uncomfortable place for some people of color. And my experience with that is sometimes I get confused because I'm a civil rights activist as a president of NAACP in Eugene, and we used to sue people for being racist, or at least for uh, um, assaulting people, or at least discriminating against people. But when it's come to workplace, before I became union steward, you don't know how to deal with it. You have a coworker who will say something, you would assume that, well, maybe it's their bias. And to how extent can you go and figure out if they are racist, if they were directing that comment to you, or they were having a general conversation? So I know we have other panelists, so I want to wrap up and saying that we have come a long way as people of color. If you look at me, I am a minority in multiple ways. You know, I have an accent, I'm an immigrant, I'm Black, and English is my seventh language. So you have all of that, have to deal with. So it's easy for someone to pick on one of them to actually become sometimes aggressive toward me. I've seen it a lot. And but I also learned that we have a lot of allies. I know the narrative now when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, we hear all lives matter, or Black Lives Matter equal white lives do not matter. That's not true. I think throughout the history, white people from Underground Railroad all the way to now, white people have played a lot of a big role in getting racial justice. A lot of them have been killed. A lot of them died. And today, when we're talking about white racism, we're talking about systemic racism more often, because when this system was put in place, it has purposefully excluded some people. So now how can we address that? Yes, we have white supremacy. We have a lot of hate filled language out there. We have people out there walking around trying to hurt us as even leaders in the Black community. But we also have to acknowledge that there is a big majority of white people who are actually also supporting the movement. I want all of SEIU members and staff to be mindful that we are not telling anybody that their lives do not matter, but we believe that at this point, we need to put more focus on getting some racial justice, because there is no economic justice without racial justice. And we are a big union. We have, I believe, 84,000 members. So we have a diversity of opinions, a diversity of in race, ethnicity, gender, culture, and everything. So more diverse we are, chances are we're gonna also have a diversity of views and point of views. So I would like all of us to be able to focus on this moment to bring change within the union, to become anti-racist, but also bring change within our communities. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you so much for sharing, Ibrahim. I have a quick correction about questions. If you have a question, the better way to ask your question is through the chat box. So that Q&A chat box. So now we're going to hear from Jared Bourdair. He's an SEIU 503 member and attorney at the Bureau of Labor and Industry Civil Rights Division. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you to all the attendees today and this platform here to discuss the importance of equality, equity, and civil rights for not only Black people, for people of color. Right now, specifically with the Black Lives Matter movement, it has steam because of public pressure. But the question begs, how do we get that public pressure? I spent my first 4 years in undergrad at Loyola of New Orleans studying philosophy. So I have the natural inclination to want to figure things out. So I struggled for a while when this movement began on how someone can say the statement Black Lives Matter is a political statement. I came to realize, as simple as it sounds, is ignorance. But ignorance can be more profound than the connotation of the word suggest, right? I think we often use these phrases in life everyday events, but we don't apply them to the sociological phenomena that we experience, which is currently police brutality and Black Lives Matter. The phrase that comes to my mind is that ignorance is bliss. Literally, that means to not know is to be happy. I think the epitome of that statement is the Black Lives Matter movement today. When you are in a mono-ethnic society and your neighborhoods are white, your children's schools are white, and your workplace is white, you are most likely, by denotation of the word, ignorant of the plight of the Black community. And there's nothing wrong with that. We are all ignorant by proximity, which is why it's important to travel, experience different cultures, read other people's experiences, and have healthy discussions like we're having today. However, it is the willingness to remain ignorant in the practice of ethnocentrism, which is one of the conundrums of our society today. As old folks say, the players change, but the game remains the same. In the late 1990s, lawsuits alleging race-based traffic stops were being filed against state police and highway patrol agencies throughout the United States at an alarming rate. Courts ruled that racial profiling was becoming a serious issue. The court's findings aided to the arguments that police brutality was an issue. And this aided to the use of what became dash cams. Dash cams promote accountability. Departments needed them in response to public outcry. And since then, we've seen body cameras also increase since about 2015. While the statutes and policies vary state by state regarding body cameras, one thing is guaranteed, and that's the public videotaping of police. In federal courts, in general consensus is that the First Amendment protects the act of photographing, filming, and otherwise recording police officers conducting official duties in the public. And for my lawyers out there, if you want to read that case, it's Gilk v. Knuffy, 655 Federal 3D 78. It's the court citation. The public continues to learn about these incidents due to technology and social media, just like the civil rights movement with television. According to the Pew Research Center, which is a very reputable website, as of 2015, nearly 2/3 of American adults, 65%, use social media networking sites, up 7% when they first began tracking in 2005. So it's important for us to videotape these incidents, videotape these stops, and hold accountability. The power is in the public. This is relevant because only now is the lack of ignorance creating public pressure, the fact that we see it and it is visual to us. This has been happening in our communities though. This is not new. Can you imagine the amount of police brutality that exists in false accusations of resisting arrest, which is a felony, that existed before technology came around? Maybe it's time we start giving the voices of people afflicted communities a seat at the table. For example, having women a part of abortion discussions instead of an all-male panel. For example, having immigrants who escaped oppression for a better life here in America a part of immigration policy. For example, having Black people a part of systematic racism discussions. We shouldn't have to wait for videos to resurface. That is a reactive measure, and we need to be proactive, especially when we talk about lives. Nevertheless, this is what has sparked change: information, transparency, and public pressure. How do we continue to apply more public pressure? More of the same: information and transparency. So why Black Lives Matter? This is something that everyone should accept. It's sad that we have to make something analogous to relay their importance. But it's like coming home and my wife saying, "Baby, don't you love me?" And my response is, "Baby, I love all women." I'm pretty sure that wouldn't go well for us, any of us and our partners on this call. The Black Lives Matter movement is a direct response to police brutality. So as Ibrahim stated earlier, it's not that we don't think all people's lives matter. It's that we're highlighting lives that aren't being considered and aren't being treated equally as other people's lives. It isn't necessarily the police that we need to focus on, though, but rather the people we allow in the police department, the people that we keep in the police department, and the systems that we build to protect negligent and malicious police. On the Free Thought Project, I read an FBI statement in 2006 that white supremacist groups have historically engaged in strategic efforts to infiltrate law enforcement communities and recruit from law enforcement communities. Why would white supremacists want to infiltrate law enforcement? This is because of qualified immunity, which protects police from being held accountable. They know they are protected. In other words, those in government positions, those who have power to create change, and while they know this information, they are classified, in my opinion, as enablers. This is one method of many we need to use to attack systematic racism. We must continue to create change, provide information, provide transparency, and create public pressure. I would leave you guys with just to try to remember that the power is in the public's hands. Video cameras, healthy discussions, holding each other accountable. Thank you.
Thank you for providing us with that context and history, that advice, Jared. Super helpful. Our final panelist is SEIU 503 President, Steve Demaris. Steve, can you please let us know what actions our union is taking to dismantle white supremacy and end racism here in Oregon?
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Ibrahim and Jared, for sharing your lived experiences and your insights. I promise to get to Emily's request, but I want to start by thanking people that have gone before us and conducted the fight. I was listening this morning on the radio to an interview with John Lewis, one of those people. And it's customary to thank those who have carried on the fight before us for what they won and passed on to us. But there's something specific I want to thank them for, and that is for providing us with moral clarity. There was a time when many unions in the United States were segregated, and if and when there was a discussion about whether to desegregate before they had to due to laws, I'm sure there would have been debates about whether that was the way to move forward. I'm sure there would have been members who would have threatened to drop their membership if the union did that. I'm sure there would have been outside groups that would have tried to use that against the union to exploit differences. But today, can there be any doubt? There is no doubt as to what the correct thing, the right thing would have been to do would have been at that time. And I'm grateful for that, because there can be no doubt. There is no doubt what the right thing is for SEIU 503 to do at this time. And for doing the right thing, we have had members drop. We have had an outside organization who's dedicated to destroying public unions take advantage of, or try to take advantage of the controversy to split up members and divide the union. We've had questions about whether or not this is something we should be doing, but it's clear to me and to the member leaders of this union that is the correct way to go. Now, SEIU 503 has had progressively for the last number of years has been awakening to the fact that in order to be the kind of union we want to be and to represent our members fairly, we have to become an anti-racist organization. And it took some time to get there. I mean, because initially we thought the thinking was, well, we have to become inclusive. And then we realized it requires more than being inclusive. It actually requires becoming anti-racist. And there's a number of steps that have been taken to try to achieve that. Staff attended training about becoming an anti-racist organization as opposed to just being an inclusive organization. And becoming an anti-racist organization, achieving racial justice has been interwoven into SEIU 503 strategic plan. And recently we adopted as a policy endorsement of the movement for Black Lives and its goals. And I'm proud to say that SEIU 503 is a member-run organization. It's not the kind of union where the president or the executive director can just lay down what the policy is going to be for the union. A policy has to be adopted by the members. And this decision to support the movement for Black Lives was a decision by the members. In this case, the member representatives that serve on our board of directors, which administers our affairs. And it's a rather comprehensive policy and motion, and it recognizes there's a lot of different elements to it. That includes, as I mentioned, becoming an anti-racist organization ourselves internally, and exploring and learning and implementing all the different steps we have to take to get there. And it also recognizes that externally we need to take advantage and use the strength we've developed as a union to further those goals. Now, that includes supporting and working with other groups that are fighting for racial justice, and in particular, trying to fight anti-Blackness. And we've committed to working alongside those organizations and to supporting those organizations in multiple ways. That includes providing resources. The motion that was passed by the board of directors recently includes a commitment of $50,000 of union funds to contribute to those organizations, and we'll draw upon our members, including AFRAM and the Women of Color Caucus and our Civil and Human Rights Committee, to make those decisions on where that money goes. And it also involves using our position. And Jared spoke of the voice, having the voice at the table, the people that are actually involved. SEIU 503 has managed to grow into being the largest union in Oregon. It's the largest organization for social justice in Oregon, and perhaps the most powerful political organization in Oregon. So SEIU 503 does have a voice at the table. We're going to use that to provide a voice for people of color and all BIPOC individuals. That's our commitment. There were a couple of questions in the Q&A. I hope that answered one of the questions. Anne, regarding the Portland police, they're not out yet, but they're definitely in the process of leaving. That's that process has begun, and that's where we're going to end up. there is the question of whether or not they're going to stay has been answered, and they are not. So I really appreciate the number. I see we have well over 100 participants today. I appreciate you taking your time to participate. SEIU 503 recognizes that we're at a moment here, a moment we haven't experienced at least since the 60s, when we reached some tipping points and we're able to accomplish some very important legislation. There seems to be at least the possibility right now that perhaps some crucial changes in the system itself, particularly the law enforcement system, might be achieved. And it would be a tragedy if the opportunity arose and wasn't taken advantage of. 503 is committed to doing what it can to seize whatever opportunity there is to achieve as much change as possible in this moment. And I am proud that's taking that position. I'm proud that SEIU 503 is going to stand with other organizations with the same goals and with other individuals who support that, to do what we can. I also recognize that we don't have all the answers, that it's a learning process, that we have to be open to criticism and to feedback. We have to be able to change and grow. And I'm confident that we can do that, because SEIU 503 has shown throughout its history that it is capable of growing and changing and adapting. And so I'm confident it's going to continue to do so. I'm confident that in Oregon, SEIU 503 is going to be on the forefront, along with others in working for this change. And I'm confident that SEIU 503 will also always recognize that change has to happen within, as well as what we do external. So thank you. And I'm glad to answer, take any questions, along with Jared and Ibrahim.
Yes. So if you have any questions, make sure to type them in the chat. Thank you so much, Steve. It is an exciting moment right now with these commitments. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, okay.
And I see there's a question from Michelle in the Q&A, and I'm glad to take that, answer that. And that is about recruiting BIPOC individuals for union leadership, which right now is predominantly white. And how can that be done? The how part is, again, something we're always trying to learn and do better. I will say that in the last, well, just I'm over 3.5 years into being president of SEIU 503, and I would say just in that time, there's been a very dramatic change in the engagement and activity of our caucuses. Ibrahim and Emily have both mentioned those, and they've really grown. They've really become active, and they become involved in decision making and governance of our union in ways they haven't been before. And they've developed. It's been an alternate means of outside our traditional elected offices to develop leadership. And I'm very confident that we're going to see from the caucuses people stepping up into the elected leadership that you're referring to, Michelle, and hopefully including these elections that nominations are open for right now for board of directors and statewide officers. And the other thing, of course, is we just have to simply always have to be conscious of the need to recruit BIPOC individuals and be aware of the barriers for their involvement, and we'll remove those barriers and to encourage their participation.
And I want to add something to what Steve said. Yes, for the last, I would say, 3.5 years that I have been involved as a member leader I have to say that we have, there are some changes, and we have seen the current leadership, Steve and Melissa, and of the board, um, um, trying to recruit more people of color member leaders. We have had Afram at least had seen some new leadership emerge, and that was a very intentional seek from the current leadership, and we are ex- hoping to continue to work in that way to find new leaders. And I'm glad Jared's here today, and Shana was here at the Juneteenth celebration. Those were my effort to reach out to potential member leaders and try to at least give them the opportunity to participate, to get to know our union better, to get to know how we conduct the union business, but also to be a voice and share the experience with others, like in this case. And we hope that, as Steve said, the coming election, some people of color will run. And I have to say that we have we have the attention of people. We appreciate it. We have the board and the members looking up on us and asking how they can be involved, even within the caucuses, how they can be an ally to the caucuses. And we have the elections coming at national election, and we want to be able to encourage people, BIPOC, not only to be active within the union, but also within their own community, because we have to organize as one of the our motto is, it is to organize the unorganized. So we have to be able to get there to empower people enough that they feel like now they can take leadership. So if you want more leadership, more diversity in the leadership, I would say encourage the caucuses, participate. Even if you are not a person of color, you can always be at the table, because it's sometimes a learning moment. We get to know people. I saw the numbers. I think 91% of white people do not know personally any black people, other than any black person, other than work-related interaction. So I think caucuses are a great place to be and sit and listen and get to know people's experiences, and also in your community, get to support the civil rights movement, and support SEIU of becoming an anti-racist organization. And when you see something, say something. Always speak up against racism, and always empower people to speak up for themselves, and always give no room to racism at workplace or in your community.
Thank you, Ibrahim and Steve. It's exciting to be part of a member-driven organization, and truly it's going to be on us, the members, to hold ourselves and our union accountable to implement some of the ideas that have been talked about internally, also in our workplaces and in our communities. I'm told that we have a little more time if there are any more questions.
There's one question.
Okay.
About promoting educational curriculum in school across the state. I want to say that the conversation is ongoing right now within the Civil and Human Rights Committee, and it was brought up by Paula Pina and other. Paula Pina is part of the indigenous caucus, and also the Women of Color caucus. And she's also a member of the Civil and Human Rights Committee. And I'm a co-chair of that committee. And we had this discussion. So some people volunteer to find more information about the right approach, so we can bring this to the board. And I would encourage this person, is I don't want to say the name to butcher it, but I will encourage that person to approach me or staff to be giving our contact, or she can call me directly at 541-606-3007. I can put my number on the chart, but I don't know how to do it. But you can contact me. I'll be more than happy to have you part of that group that's actually having a discussion about the problem you just brought to our attention.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Does anybody on the panel have any final thoughts before we close this event? Okay. Well, this is all the time we have today. Wish we had a little more, but thank you to all our panelists and everyone who took the time to join us today. We know everybody's working really hard during the global pandemic, so this is really appreciated, the high turnout. As Jared was saying, this is one of many conversations and discussions that our union and others will have as we move forward and support this movement for Black lives and our commitment to ending racism and the culture that breeds this racism. I hope to see all of you, and also new faces too, as we move forward together in this journey. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.